Hello and welcome back to the Wasteland, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about some more New Vegas perks. This time we're going to be going over 10 of the best quality of life perks. These are not going to be combat-related perks, at least directly combat-related. Some of them definitely have overlap from utility to combat, but for the most part, they are generally utility-based perks. These ones can be super nice for a lot of situations. They can make the game a little bit easier for you. They can make you a lot more money. They can make the game a little bit more manageable. And some of these can just keep you alive longer, which is always a good thing in the Wasteland. So let's begin. Coming in at our number 10 spot, we have Hit the Deck. This is sort of a combat perk, or at least it's probably going to affect you the most in combat. So what Hit the Deck does is you take reduced damage from explosives. This counts towards all explosives, your own explosives, and enemy explosives. These are very useful because you may not actually be in combat when you're encountering explosives. You might just be exploring an area and find landmines, and, not getting blown up by landmines is always a good thing. It's also very useful if you're just trying to get to certain places, like the Boomer's place, assuming you don't have Turbo or the Implant GRX, where you can just dash right to the main gate if you would like. And early on, at least if you're playing on something like the very hard difficulty or the hardcore difficulty or a combination of very hard and hardcore, things like dynamite are pretty dangerous to you early on. They can do a lot of damage to you. They can cripple your limbs, and finding doctor's bags is a pain, so you usually have to go back to Doc Mitchell to get yourself fixed up. Or you have to find things like Hydra, where you might get addicted, and then you have to go back to Doc Mitchell just to get yourself, not addicted to them. So Hit the Deck is a nice quality of life perk that makes it so you're less likely to die from explosives, and you can potentially not have as many broken limbs from explosives. Coming in at our number 9 spot, we have a tie. This is Strong Back and Burden to Bear. Both these perks do the exact same thing, they're just at different levels. Strong Back, I believe, is at level 8, and then Burden to Bear is at level 30. And what both these perks do is that they give you 50 more carry weight. That can be pretty useful on just about any character, because just carrying more is kind of more useful. It's not entirely necessary, though, and you could easily skip both these perks or skip one of these perks if you don't really feel like you want them. It's really good if you enjoy carrying around a lot of weapons or a lot of ammo or really heavy weapons. It is just really useful to have extra carry weight, although again, not entirely necessary. Coming in at number 8, we have our gender perks. So this is all of the perks that kind of help you deal more damage to either the same or the opposite sex, whether that be things like Confirmed Bachelor, Lady Killer, Black Widow. The other one that I can't say that's very French. I know people have told me how to say it in the comments below, but I'm still not going to attempt it. Generally, it's better to have more damage towards males because you're usually going to be fighting more male characters than female characters. That's just always been a thing in the Fallout games. But they do come with another set of utility. You get a lot of unique dialogue options with a lot of different characters for this. Some of which you can convince to be companions, some of which you can get closer to and kill, and other ones you can just talk into getting things like discounts or getting through a speech check that you would otherwise need some sort of skill to get. At our number 7 spot, we have Radchild. Radchild's a bit of an odd one, but it can be pretty useful. What Radchild does is for every 200 radiation that we have, we get increased healing from this. And if you get your radiation up to 800 rads, you can actually regenerate a lot of health pretty quickly. That can be really nice. This is an early game perk. It still does require 70 survival to get, so it's a little bit of a steep perk to buy, or at least early on, but it can be useful throughout any part of the game. This is just really good if you don't want to be using up things like stim packs early on. I usually don't, because I just use stim packs as money, more or less. So Radchild is a really good option there, and you can always just get a bunch of rads, let yourself go all the way up to full, and then take a bunch of rad away to negate this. At our number 6 spot, we have Comprehension. Comprehension is a pretty good skill, and it is much more useful if you want to take something like Logan's Loophole, or if you don't have the DLCs for Fallout New Vegas and your max level is just level 30. If your max level is level 50 and you plan on getting up there, then Comprehension is less useful overall. It can still be decent on a lower intelligence build. That way you don't have to worry about getting perk points from magazines or from books. This actually helps with both of those, but this makes it a little bit easier for you to level up. So what Comprehension does is now, instead of getting 3 points from every skill book that you find, you get 4 points, which that's pretty useful because you do find a decent amount of skill books throughout New Vegas and throughout the DLCs. The other effect that Comprehension has is that you also get double the effect of all the magazines. So usually magazines give you 10 skill points in whatever skill you want, with a couple magazines being an exception to that. This way you get 20 points to it. This can be really useful early on because Comprehension is a very low level perk, and just having the magazine buff on it is pretty useful because you can get things like 20 more lockpicking, 20 more science, 20 more repair. You can get a lot of very useful skills, also things like 20 more speech, 20 more barter, so that you can get more of an advantage in the early game and get to more locations easier or get more items easier than you otherwise would, especially if you don't have a problem stealing from people. Having more sneak or having more lockpicking is super useful for that. So comprehension is a pretty good skill. Again, it's not a necessary skill if you want to get to max skill points and you're just playing the game normally. Moving on to our number 5 spot, we have Them's Good Eating. Them's Good Eating is such a useful perk, especially if you're playing on the hardcore difficulty. It's great for making money and it's great for keeping you alive. What Them's Good Eating does is anytime that you kill a living being, doesn't matter what type of living being it is, so long as you're not killing a robot or something, you can then loot the body, and there is a chance that they will drop either blood sausage or thin red paste. Both of these are 2 of the best healing items in the game. They give you a lot of healing over time, and they also sell for a lot of money. They also don't weigh very much, which is why they're so good for just a money-making item. If you get a bunch of blood sausage, you save it up, you can sell it to traders, and you'll just have a ton of money that way. Coming in at number 4, we have the ammo-based perks. So this is Hand Loader, Vigilant Recycler, and Mad Bomber. Those 3 in particular. You could also throw in Scavenger here if you want to. Scavenger, I think, is the lesser of those ones, but the other ones are pretty useful. So it's kind of a 3 or 4-way tie, depending on how you want to look at it. All of these are very useful, and all of them are kind of directly combat related, sort of. Since you don't actually use them in combat, use them to get an advantage in combat ahead of time. All of these give you something that is useful for any of the builds that you want to go for. Hand Loader is for guns, Mad Bomber is for explosives, and Vigilant Recycler is for energy weapons. Each of these give you new recipes to each of these type of weapons. So something like Hand Loader can give you new unique bullets. You can get things like Jacketed Soft Points for the 308, which give you more damage. You could also get something like the match rounds for the 50 cal, which make the bullets a little bit more accurate and do a little bit more damage. Most of these come with some sort of trade-off, like a lot of the unique ammunitions. Maybe they do more damage, but they break your gun a little bit quicker. Some of them aren't that way. Some of them just give you an advantage, which is just a straight upgrade to the weapons. It's just you'll have less ammo overall because you need more resources to actually make these. But in New Vegas, that's usually not such a big issue. Vigilant Recycler makes it so you're more likely to get more empty cells back, so you could recycle them. So that way you can turn them into better ammunition for all of your laser weapons, which is super useful. And Mad Bomber lets you unlock new recipes for explosives, which is super useful early on because explosives, you generally don't find a whole lot early on into New Vegas. Most of the time you're running around with things like dynamite and some of the other powder ganger stuff that you can kind of find. Maybe you'll be running around with the mercenary grenade launcher, but you don't get a whole bunch of 40mm grenades right away. This really helps you out get a lot of explosives going. And if you're going with a full explosives build, I would highly recommend getting this one early on because it will save you just a ton of time and just a lot of headache over the time of New Vegas. And something like Scrounger could also be potentially useful in this situation too, at least if you get it early enough, because you can find some extra ammo. Although I honestly don't think that perk is super useful and not really necessary in New Vegas. Coming in at number 3, we have Pack Rat. Pack Rat is arguably one of the best perks in the hardcore mode. In regular New Vegas, it's really not necessary, but in hardcore, it does help you a lot. What Pack Rat does is all of your items that weigh 2 or less now get cut in half in total weight, which is super useful, especially for ammunition on the hardcore difficulty. So you can carry twice as much ammunition as you'd like. It's also just easier to pick up random stuff laying around on the ground. If you want wrenches or scrap metal or something like that, it makes so you can carry more of this, which is just useful. It also affects some weapons, like Chance's knife being cut down from 1 weight to half of a weight. At our number 2 spot, we have Chemist. Chemist is another really strong perk in New Vegas, and what Chemist does is make it so all drug effects last twice as long. That is really, really useful because a lot of the drugs are really strong in New Vegas. Depending on what type of builds you are running, certain chems can be better than others. Psycho is always going to be a good one. Jet can be really good on action point builds. Medics makes it so you just become tankier and it lasts longer than it otherwise would. Turbo lasts twice as long, which makes it so you could fight or run away from just about any sort of situation. It also affects the Implant GRX, which is a super useful combat perk too. I would consider that one more of a combat perk, even though you can use it outside of combat. And funny enough, if you actually stack this with Lily's Stealth Girl ability, and I think there's one other perk that affects Stealth Boys. Maybe it's one of the armors that affects Stealth Boys. If you take all that, you can have a Stealth Boy last for like a minute and a half or something, which is pretty crazy, where just enemies won't be able to find you for a minute and a half. You can move a really long distance in a minute and a half and steal a lot of stuff within that time, or just kill a lot of things within that time. And then for our number 1 quality of life perk, I picked Jury Rigging. Jury Rigging is just super useful. You do need 90 repair to get this and to be level 14, so it's going to be somewhere in the mid-game and a really high skill. But this does make it so you can essentially make an infinite amount of money in New Vegas very easy, and it makes it so you don't have to worry about any of your weapons or armor in particular. What jury rigging directly does is that you can repair things with similar things, and similar things can vary quite a bit. If you have, for example, something like a brush gun or a 50 cal, you can repair it with any other manual action gun. So this could be a bolt action rifle like the varmint rifle, or it could be something like a lever action gun similar to the cowboy repeater. You can fix up just about anything that way. It also makes it so any armor you're wearing becomes way more easy to manage because you don't need something that is directly related to it. You just need the same type of armor. So you can now repair power armor with metal armor. You can repair Joshua Graham's armor with light armor. You can repair medium armor with any other medium armor. It makes it really easy, especially if you, again, don't have a problem stealing stuff. You can steal things like combat armor from the boomers. Go buy yourself some medium armor, or just kill some of like Caesar's Legion or the NCR to get more medium armor and then fix it up and sell it. And you can make tons and tons of money super fast. It kind of breaks the economy of the game, although there's plenty of ways to do that in New Vegas. This is just one of the easiest and most practical ways to do it. These were 10 quality of life perks in Fallout New Vegas. Tell me your top 10 or top 5 favorite quality of life perks down in the comments below. I would love to hear them, because there is a lot of decent perks that aren't necessarily combat related that are still super useful throughout New Vegas.